Remember way back in ancient history, all the way back to the end of the election cycle in 2020, when Hunter Biden's laptop was recovered after being abandoned in a PC repair shop, and the contents of that laptop were examined, and they found all sorts of compromising pictures, including potential drug use, illicit photos, some that may have included minors. I mean, all of that stuff. I mean, just that, though. And also, perhaps even more importantly and more damning, direct ties to shady, to say the least, business deals between Hunter Biden, Ukraine companies, Chinese companies, and potentially Joe Biden himself as the beneficiary of contracts that might have been procured specifically because of who Hunter Biden was and access to his father as vice president of the United States at the time those contracts were procured. I mean, just that little story. It was published in the New York Post, and then they shared it on Twitter. Well, Twitter took it amongst themselves to go ahead and ban the New York Post until they took down the article. The New York Post resisted, of course, and this became a social media back and forth. And eventually, Twitter would relent, but they did so under something called the hacked materials policy, despite the fact that there's no indication that any sort of hacking occurred to acquire the materials, and there's no indication that any illegal activity occurred to acquire these materials either. But hey, Twitter knew, they had it on good authority, that this was definitely hacked and illegal and probably fake. And oh dear Christ, if people see this, Joe Biden might lose the election. And there's actually pretty good indication followed through some surveying that was done post-election that if people had known about this story, if it had been widely disseminated, that the election would have gone very differently across all states, but critically in key swing states, and we may not have Joe Biden as president today. That is, of course, assuming you know what? We're not going to talk about any of that stuff. What we're going to talk about, though, is what happened next, where the RNC filed a complaint with the Federal Elections Commission about the removal of this tweet and the suppression of it by Twitter, calling it an illegal in-kind distribution to the Joe Biden campaign, or contribution to the Joe Biden campaign. Let's talk about that. I'm Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. I'm a lawyer. I'm also a legal and political commentator. Wherever you're watching, go ahead, hit like, hit subscribe, turn on those notifications. Make sure you watch every video because you don't want to miss this stuff, right? Okay, here we go. Here's the New York Times article from today. The FEC dismisses claims that Twitter illegally blocked a Hunter Biden article. Now, let me get something out in the clear. I am not 100% sure that I agree with the underlying law that Twitter cannot make these decisions, or that someone cannot make these decisions. I actually believe that people should have the ability to say whatever they want about a candidate and to disseminate whatever they want about a candidate. Now, there are arguments about social media and its collusion with government or with certain political factions, and those arguments are valid. This isn't really the place here, but I'm not really sure that this underlying law in a vacuum is the proper way to handle things. I prefer more speech and less government intervention in speech in general. However, there are, I guess, various laws about what different people can do that might potentially impact an election, and those laws apply to you. And if they apply to you, they maybe should apply to Twitter as well. And that is the key distinction here. It's not necessarily about what should be. It's about rules for thee, but not for me, that all big tech seems to be playing right now. Here we go. The FEC has dismissed Republican accusations that Twitter violated election laws in October by blocking people from posting links to an unsubstantiated New York Post article about Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.'s son, Hunter Biden, in a decision that is likely to set a precedent for future cases involving social media sites and federal campaigns. Let's just get something out in the open. This was absolutely substantiated. This is clearly substantiated. It was very well documented. There's no denial of it. There can't be a denial of it because it was Hunter's info. It was clearly his email. It's clearly him in the pictures of himself. Like, how are they going to say it's unsubstantiated? It's more substantiated probably than this article from the New York Times. It's amazing how substantiated something is when you are able to actually view the physical evidence and the digital evidence that exists of an event. I mean, I'm not blown away. It's the New York Times weeping apologetics constantly for the Democrat Party, but this is about as substantiated as you can get. And it would have been even more substantiated had the rest of the media and had social media not blocked it, and had the rest of the media done their job during an election. But they decided, they colluded, they conspired against electing Donald Trump. They manipulated the American people, and they did so in the open. It was covered in a Time magazine article. I have done a video on it. I strongly suggest checking out that video and realizing exactly what happened in the 2020 election. Twitter, Facebook, the New York Times, news sources all over, even Fox News, all had agreements in place on how to cover the election in such a way as to do the maximum to make sure Donald Trump did not get elected. And they admitted it. They have no credit. Anyway, the FEC determined that Twitter's actions regarding the Hunter Biden article had been undertaken for a valid commercial reason, not a political purpose. Oh, were they? Yes, Twitter, notoriously consistent on the hacked materials policy coming from a news bureau. You know, they don't block literally hacked materials that are posted by the New York Times or anybody else. Just this one they chose, but it was a valid commercial reason. It had nothing to do with the politics. Of course not. Why would anyone think that Twitter was in favor of Joe Biden and doing something to try and manipulate the public into voting for him? That's crazy talk, right? And since they were this is the important distinction here. Since they were for a, quote, valid commercial reason and not a political purpose, even though it was overtly political and violated their own practices on their valid commercial reason, they were then allowable. Those actions were allowable because of this. So if they had been for the political purpose, they would not have been allowable, is the implication here. Which, again, while I may disagree with the underlying law, you are subject to that law. I am subject to that law. Everybody is subject to that law. Except Twitter, in this instance, because they frankly just lied. According to a document outlining the decision obtained by the New York Times, the commission's ruling, which was made last month behind closed doors and is set to become public soon, provides further flexibility to social media giants like Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat to control what is shared on their platforms regarding federal elections. And if that doesn't bother you, that the current government administration that runs the FEC right now, because, well, it's a federal department under the executive branch, that they have the ability to tell social media sites how to control what's on their platforms regarding federal elections. If you haven't figured out that free speech doesn't exist in this digital world, I don't know what to tell you, because the government has just colluded again with social media to determine what you can say and what they can say about an election. But they're not state actors. And to be clear, under the current definition and understanding of the state actor doctrine by the United States Supreme Court, they're not, despite the fact that the government is giving them more control over how to control political messaging that benefited the current government in power. They are not state actors according to current jurisprudence, which is why that doctrine may need a glance. I'm just saying. The suppression of the article about Hunter Biden caused an avalanche of conservative criticism and prompted accusations that the tech company was improperly aiding the Biden presidential campaign. They were. Of course they were. Of course they were. Including a formal complaint by the RNC that said Twitter's accusations amounted to an illegal in-kind contribution to the campaign. But the FEC disagreed. The commission said Twitter had credibly explained that blocking the article's distribution was a commercial decision, and that the move followed existing policies related to hacked materials, according to the factual and legal analysis provided to the parties involved in the complaint. What commercial decision would that be? To make less money, to generate less traffic, to exclude a larger percentage of their customer base? I mean, just those things. Just those things. Twitter actually reversed course within a day of its decision to block distribution of the Hunter Biden article. And its chief executive, yes, after everybody ran their own articles covering for Twitter, after the damage was done, after the Twitter was able to develop a counter narrative and build it into the platform, saying that this was not reliable content, after all of those things, they reversed their course. And its chief executive, Jack Dorsey, has called the initial move a mistake. A mistake. So again, it's a valid commercial decision that ended up being invalid by the company's own commercial policies. Again, you can't overstate the lunacy, the duality that's going on here. Twitter made a valid commercial decision, except it disagreed with its own valid commercial decision and reversed the decision. So it wasn't a valid commercial decision, because it was a political decision, and their subsequent actions show that it wasn't commercial, because what they needed to do was craft the narrative around the distribution, and they delayed it long enough to do so. It was a political decision. Of course it was. The FEC's official vote on the case, the commission is split equally between 3 Democratic-aligned commissioners and 3 Republicans, is not yet public, nor are any additional statements written by commissioners. Such statements often accompany the closure of cases and can provide further insight. In addition to rejecting the complaint, they dismissed other allegations that Twitter had violated election laws by shadow banning Republican users or appearing to limit the visibility of their posts without providing an explanation, suppressing other anti-Biden content, and labeling former President Donald J. Trump's tweets with warnings about their accuracy. The FEC rejected those accusations, writing that they were vague, speculative, and unsupported by the available information. And there is nothing else really to say about that. The FEC, again, rules for thee, but not for me, going on for big tech. And so long as big tech is supporting the Democrats. I mean, that's just how it goes. That's how it is. That's how it will be, probably long into the future. But there you go. There you have it, y'all. That's the nail in the coffin on the Hunter Biden laptop thing. Who knows if they'll ever actually release the opinions and comments? Hopefully they will. We'll see, maybe, or we probably won't see, right? This headline will usurp that line that'll come out much later, or it'll just be updated to and appended to this article that everybody's already seen. Who knows? Who knows? Until that happens, if we get a copy of them, I'll take a look. Otherwise, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. You know my opinion on this. Social media gets to play with different rules than everybody else, and the election system, at least as far as the media, and I say at least, at the very least, as far as the media, is compromised. It is compromised. And the fact that we have social media companies in bed with government controlling who gets to say what about an election should bother every actual American. Until next time, guys. Peace. Peace.